So, you want to learn about transition matrices? Listen up. Transition matrices are used to explain how something changes from one state to another over time. By watching penguins at Phillip Island, we've noticed they nest in different places each year, either the sand, the bushes, or the rocks. We've also noticed that of the penguins that nest in the sand this year, 70% will go back to the sand next year, 20% of those will head to the rocks next year, and 10% will nest in the bushes next year. Of the penguins that nest in the rocks, 60% will go back to the rocks, 35% will go to the bushes, and 5% will nest in the sand next year. And for the penguins nesting in the bushes, 40% will go back to the bushes next year, 40% will go to the sand next year, and the last 20% will head off to the rocks next year for nesting. Okay. This information can be represented in a transition matrix. Let's check it out. Of the penguins that are nesting in the sand this year, 70% or 0.7 are going to nest in the sand next year. So I look at the S at the top and go across to the S for next year, and I put 0.7 in there. Of the penguins that are in the sand this year, so I start at the top and look at the S, follow that down until I find the B for bushes on the right. 10% are going to be in the bushes next year, and 20% are going to be in the rocks. Now those three decimals are from penguins that are in the sand this year, and it shows where they'll be next year. Of the penguins nesting in the bushes this year, 40% are going to stay in the bushes. So there's bushes at the top and bushes at the right, 40%. Penguins that will be bushes this year and sand next year is 40%. And penguins that are in bushes this year, but the rocks next year is 20%. And those three decimals you can see on the bottom left there, with the penguin that's currently in the bushes. And finally, for penguins that are in the rocks at the moment, 60% are going to return to the rocks. So you look at the top of the matrix, R for rocks, and the right-hand side, R for rocks. That means rocks this year, rocks next year, 0.6 or 60%. 35% of the rocks penguins are going to head off to the bushes next year, and 5% will end off in the sand. And be careful, 5% is 0.05. So there we have a transition matrix. Now, what on earth do we do with it? This is what a penguin sounds like. So, where were the penguins nesting to start with? Well, there were 100 nesting in the sand, there were 50 nesting in the bushes, and 30 nesting in the rocks, which is 180 penguins altogether. I can show this in a matrix, like this, where I go, whoops, S for sand, there's 100 of them, B for bushes, there's 50, and R for rocks, there's 30. That matrix has a special name. It's called the initial state matrix. That's how things started off in the nests. Okay. I can work out where the penguins will nest next year by multiplying my transition matrix times my initial state matrix. And when I do that, the answer will tell me where they will be next year. Stand by. So, once you grab your CAS and whack in the transition matrix and multiply it by the initial state matrix, you get this one. And that shows where the penguins will be nesting in year 1, assuming that where they started was year 0. So you've done it. Congratulations. Well done. What if I start at year 0 and I want to know where the penguins will be nesting in 6 years' time? Well, all you need to do is this. First of all, in your CAS calculator, enter your transition matrix and raise it to the power of 6, because from year 0 to year 6 there are 6 transitions. So we raise the transition matrix to the power of 6. Multiply that by where we started off in year 0, which is our initial state matrix, which you can see in the earlier on in the video. Put that in your CAS and you'll come out with a matrix that looks like this: 74, 47 and 60, which represents 74 penguins in the sand, 47 in the bushes and 60 in the rocks in 6 years' time. And you're done. Well done, and thanks for listening.